A very good evening to all of you. I am Mahadevan. I lead the school education industry practice at TCS Ion, Tata Consultancy Services. I'll be a host for today's webinar. A very important topic. We're going to spend the next an hour or so on the topic, Design Your Future. On behalf of TCS Ion, I welcome you all to the webinar. Today's topic, as I just said, is a very, very important topic given the significant changes going on in the world. In a technology-driven world, in a world where the opportunities are so many, and when the new education policy of our government recently announced brings about a very large focus on a variety of vocations, jobs, professions, it's very important to know how to get started. In fact, the world of work is changing all the time and changing fast. New job areas have emerged that didn't exist 10, 15 years back. For the company, people are no longer sticking to the same career. Forget the jobs. Forget the company, which was what people used to stay in the same job for, say, 20, 30 throughout the careers. That time is completely past. Now it's not even the job, not even the company. People are shifting careers. But everyone wants to get the right start. But it's like entering a sea, not really clearly knowing what to expect, what direction to go. And once inside, it's even more difficult to even know which direction one is facing. That's how career counseling has become a very important part for the school-going children and their parents. When is it the right time to consult a career counselor? Most parents, most often, come to this when they have a what do I do now kind of a situation. Choosing the right subjects in classes, say 9, 10 or classes 11, 12, shortlisting the right college in India or abroad, or scoring around the information about the relevant entry exams into many of the universities. There's always, how do I do it? What do I do? Every step here matters because each of it leads to a very important decision. Keeping this in mind, many of the leading schools in India have already brought in certified career counselors or counseling as a program as part of their school or as part of their educators' team. Career counselors come with tremendous knowledge and skills on the various aspects of education and life. They know the school education system very well. They come with an understanding of an individual's behavior psychology. They come with the knowledge about the corporate world, the changing jobs, the upcoming jobs, how much they pay, how well they pay, and what are the admission criteria, etc., etc. They also come up with a lot of information and knowledge on what are all the alternatives available whenever needed. To discuss on this further, we have with us two distinguished guests. They have been in this field for a very large amount of time, and we believe that they are the right set of people who can help us in clearing much of our queries or concerns. So let me take a minute welcoming John. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce the first member of our panel, Mr. Thomas John. Thomas John represents iDream Career, our partner company in this area of career counseling. iDream Career as a company has reached around 73,000 plus schools, 9 states, touching 15 million plus students. They track over 570 different vocational and professional careers and work with the government, corporates, and the professional schools. Some of the well known school brands, the best known brands of India. Leading the growth and learning team at iDream Career, John is a senior career counselor, mentor, trainer with over 6 years dedicated experience in the career counseling field. Though John started becoming a chef or studied to become a chef, right? Putting in different recipes together, he decided that it's much better putting in the recipe for a large set of students. So he started focusing on schools where he felt that he can make the maximum impact, helping young adults design their future. Welcome, John. Next, I welcome Isha Ipsita Sarpati. Isha is a psychologist, counselor, mentor, trainer at DAV Public School, Chandrasekharpur. It's in Odisha in Bhubaneswar and is one of the foremost schools in India. In fact, if you go and type the best DAV school in India, you will often find Chandrasekharpur. It has produced a very large and a variety of leaders. It could be sportsmen, it could be people in the medical profession, engineering profession, arts profession, various different professions. In fact, that's one of the core strengths of this particular school. It's also because people like Isha have been focusing on enabling children and their parents look at a wide variety of careers. A lifelong learner, Isha has been in the career counseling field for over a decade, focusing on adolescents. She conducts workshops for students, parents, teachers on career guidance, psychological concerns, and the educational strategies. She is a resource person for CBSE since 2016. Apart from conducting workshops for teachers, she also develops modules for the various sessions and workshops addressing the various psychosocial concepts. As an active member of the Odisha Association of Counseling Psychologists, she is dedicated to supporting the school children to be better versions of themselves by helping them design their future. Welcome, Isha. So let me start now by requesting John to take us through the steps involved in choosing a career. So John, over to you.
Thank you for the very warm introduction, Maha, and thank you for the TCS team to allow us to do this. So I am actually working off the clock, so I'll be as fast as possible. So you already have an introduction of what iDream Career does and where we work. So I'll directly jump into, first of all, why is career guidance important? Often basis because in India, careers are chosen basis academic aptitude alone, and which is one of the reasons why you have so many different studies that have been done by various articles that I've read. Basically, in India, we have less than 1 in 50,000 students who actually receive holistic career guidance. And when I say holistic career guidance, I mean actually something that's been researched, something that's scientifically proven. Most of the times, we are looking at career guidance as advice that could come in from a neighbor, that could come in from a family member, and so on. Right. And most of the times that the focus area always is, what are you good at in school? And because that is the primary focus area, we have seen studies by the Deccan Herald in April this year that said that about 50% of the MBBS students want to opt out midway because while they have the academic prowess to crack the NEET exam and get in, a lot of them find out midway during the MBBS program that perhaps the personality might not match, or there are certain interest areas that are not in tune with a career in medicine. That's a very scary proposition for me, which means, there is a 50% chance of you having a doctor who did not want to be a doctor. As per the print in 2019 alone, there were about 2,400 students who dropped out from the IITs for the same reasons. You are able to get into the college, but you're not able to sustain for a multitude of reasons because of, you don't have the type of, personality traits and interest areas and skill sets to be able to pursue a course in engineering from the IITs. And as per LinkedIn, 1 in 3 career professionals in India are career sleepwalking, meaning they don't currently know where they are at, they don't currently know where they're headed, but there is using the current situation as a platform to the next one. So a lot of the times there's hardly any planning that goes behind what a career trajectory should be. And as a counselor, one question that I often get asked is, what is the scope for a certain career? I would say it's one of the most overused words in the career counseling space, primarily because scope is not static; it does not remain the same. Scope changes very widely. The pandemic is a very good example of why there are multiple of economic forces, of multitude of reasons which are global in nature, which you cannot predict or you cannot control. So when people essentially ask for scope, they're actually asking for what are the prospects and what are the futures looking like, because essentially scope uh, does not have the same answer for everybody. I'll give you a simple example. I was not really great at science when I was in school. So for me, science careers would almost have a 0% scope because I'm not really good at those subjects, right? So to answer the question of what really has prospects, or what are the number of opportunities for each area, in all the studies that I've done, I found two things which are common when you're looking at number of opportunities. Number one always is that career solving a problem for someone else? As long as it is solving a problem for someone else, there is a need for that career, or there is a need for job. There is no career out there that's existing right now that does not solve problems for others. And number two is that how close are you from your clientele, physically speaking or geographically speaking? So your clientele is closer to you. That means you have more number of opportunities. These are the two common areas that I've seen. And when you're looking at what type of problems that you want to solve, I think any student or parent can just look out the window and you would see that there are a multitude of issues that are there that need to be solved urgently. And four out of the topmost areas that I've seen are hunger, pollution, waste, and safety. Uh, Now, if you're looking at hunger, it's not only a chef, but an agriculturalist or someone who's working in public policy, food technology, and nutrition. Waste management is not only the responsibility of sustainability managers or even environmental lawyers, but people in public policy, anthropology also can impact it. If you're looking at pollution, I mean, you have automobile engineers, petroleum engineers that can impact it. You have people working in public policy, which is why you have systems like a Bharat Stage 4, which is or a Bharat Stage 5, and so on, which is the pollution control system. And if you're looking at safety, which is one of the students had told me a couple of years ago, that safety tends to be one of my biggest concerns, because whenever I go out, I am told to come back home within a certain amount of time. Now, if you want to impact safety, of course, education, self-defense, journalism, understanding psychology, public policy, law, all of these areas impact safety in some sense or the other. So what I mean to say here is that you could choose to solve a particular problem, and the pathway you choose to pursue that problem and to solve it could be your own. You could choose multiple pathways to solve the same kind of problem. And that would give you multiple opportunities. So you might see that you can go in from science, from humanities, from commerce, and solve different kinds of problems out there. And to be able to get to that, which is the second part of that question, which is what does the future look like? Uh, I'm sure most of us know that we are smack in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. When I say the word revolution, I usually mean a large amount of change happening in a small span of time. And every single revolution that has happened right from the dawn of agriculture, we've seen careers change very, very drastically. We've seen lifestyle change very drastically. And when I say the word artificial intelligence, I know that non-science students tend to get disinterested, but this is just to let you know how AI and technology is going to impact every single career out there. I'll give you a simple example. We might have heard about cars like companies like Tesla working on automated or autonomous vehicles. Now, why do you have a need for autonomous vehicles? Is because cars on the road or roadways tend to be the most dangerous form of travel. If you compare the number of accidents between roadways and airways and railways, I think the roadways are the most dangerous format, because there is lack of communication or interaction between vehicles. And also there are times that human variables are involved, like there could be a driver who is not in the right mood, who's drunk, who's under the influence, and that could create safety issues. Now, if you have autonomous vehicles, I know that there are causes with autonomous vehicles as well, even they crash. But the good part about technology is it always gets better and cheaper over time. And when you have cheaper vehicles, automatically the vehicle insurance companies are going to get impacted. So you would see that because of self-driving cars, you have insurance sector and thereby banking get impacted. You've seen cryptocurrencies already out there. Though India is banned it right now, but we have seen the use of blockchain for iTunes. We've seen the use of smart money management and data security. I've seen videos in health care where there were robotic surgeries that were very, very precise surgeries happening. I've seen automated pharmacies. There are companies like Samsung who are working on smart pills that could actually connect to your cell phone and tell you exactly when the next pill is supposed to be taken, thereby reducing dependency, controlling dosage, and thereby controlling side effects as well. Prosthetics, we've already seen how much it's changed thanks to 3D printing and thanks to a lot of AI tech. 3D printed organs might be a reality pretty soon, and we might not have the need for surrogates or even organ donors anymore. What does that mean? That means that we might live a longer life thanks to tech, uh, and that eventually would mean that the lifestyles of people also will change if your life expectancy is increased. Meaning that you might have a possibility in the future that people might not want to retire anymore at 60. We've already seen design, 3D printing work in design and architecture and constructing. I have heard talks by organizations like Nike that talk. There was Phil Knight who said that we could turn into a design only firm, that we sell you the design for a shoe and you could 3D print the shoe at home. Now that sounds crazy right now, but uh, there could be a time where the 3D printer is there in every household. I mean, back in the 70s when Steve Jobs said that every house will have a laserjet printer, people called him crazy. But the reality today is a laserjet printer costs you less than 3,000 rupees, meaning that technology actually gets cheaper over time. So some of you might be wondering, where is the humanities subjects out here? Actually, the humanities subjects are the underlying fabric that hold these areas together. Because if you're looking at autonomous vehicle decision making that goes behind it, you need ethics. You need to understand what human behavior is like. So underlying all of this is what the humanities hold in. So which is why the art students or the humanities students, you are going to be a very, very important part of how technology is actually evolving and at what rate it evolves. It's not only going to be dependent on the guys who are doing coding and doing programming. And that is kind of the second part of the word scope. But the most important variable in the word scope is the individual. And when you look at the individual, every part of, let's say, how you buy shoes, there are different things that you look for when you're buying shoes. Number one, of course, is size. You'll never buy a pair of shoes that's smaller than what you're supposed to be wearing. The design, the color, the brand, which could not be very different from how you choose your careers as well, with the type of course you want to go for, the kind of college you want to see yourself studying in, the kind of organization you want to see yourself working in. The scope of this career and the durability of the shoe don't essentially mean very different things. Comfort, of course, though I know there are some shoes that don't look very comfortable. Uh, what is comfortable to you? What type of personality traits actually suit a certain career? The price, what do I end up spending on this course? What can I expect as a starting salary? And of course, the purpose. Every single pair of shoe that you buy has a different purpose. And like Maha was saying in the beginning, there are people who are more comfortable changing the industries, not only the companies that they're working for. So the good part about it is that no pair of shoe will last you a lifetime. You can keep shifting between careers, but as long as you know how your skill sets are actually translated to various industries. So I know it sounds very weird when I say my career, Mike Chappell in the same line, but the factors that you choose behind or that you consider behind choosing shoes are not very different from the way you choose careers as well. And overall, I would say there are 7 different factors in choosing a career. Number one is your skill sets, and some of you have very interesting hobbies. Your hobbies teach you various skill sets beyond your curriculum. Your aptitude or interest, your personality is something that I'll discuss in the next slide, because we assess that through the TCS Iron Compass tool. Your values and motivations, what are the reasons why you want to actually work? Your contacts and network and your location and access to information. The last two usually is not under the student's control, but the top five is basically under the student's control. And eventually, I would feel that all of these 7 factors need to be considered when you're making a holistic career decision. And to be able to help that with that, I will explain to you how we assess it at the TCS Iron system as well. But few of the other areas that you also need to focus on is time management for competitive exams. General awareness is a demon with no syllabus, so which is why the more you know, the better it is. There is no harm in knowing extra or knowing what the world is actually what's actually happening in the world around. Because you have multiple entrance exams today, like the NDA, like the CLAT exam, that have a segment in general awareness. So even NCH and CD, a lot of BBA exams also do it. Group discussions, the ability to have a discussion with someone without actually losing your temper, having a very, very a logical conversation. That's also really important. Building impressive resumes and preparing for interviews are part of the process for preparing for college admissions as well. Talking to professionals and taking virtual tours are very, very important. It's important that you understand what are the challenges and rewards for each career you're going for. More importantly, the challenges. And the last two I can't stress upon enough, which is read more, develop a reading habit, because as long as you're in education in some form or the other, whether you're doing pursuing your UG program or your masters, reading actually is fundamental to learning. So, build that reading skill. And of course, I'm not saying that you can go ahead and pick up any book out there in the library. There are certain books that are best suited for certain individuals. So, figure out what your hobbies are. I'm sure there are millions of books available in every single hobby that you can think of. And of course, building skills is something that is very, very important right now, because the way companies hire right now is very different. In the last 10 or 15 years, the focus is slowly shifting from the academic degrees to the kind of skill sets and experience you bring to the table. When you're actually choosing subjects, because what it boils down to is class 9 and 10 students figuring out how they want to choose their streams, and class 11 and 12 building a college plan. Kind of point. So when you're looking at how class 9 and 10 is supposed to look at stream choices, I believe class 11 is known as the year of freedom. You get to choose what you love, and you get to divorce the subjects that have been giving you nightmares till now. So I think there are 4 simple rules of choosing these subjects. Choose what you love. It's a no-brainer. If you pick up subjects that you enjoy studying, you are very likely to do well when you pursue it in the long term as well. Uh, Choose subjects that you score well in, but do remember that there are certain subjects that are very easy to score in, however, may not have too much of impact, or may not open too many doors for you later. Choose subjects that keep your dream job open. Now, for this, we have to keep in mind that until the NEP is actually implemented and we have a more diverse choice of subjects to keep in mind, we will wait for notifications that come in from the CBSE, from the various state boards, and from the various central boards as well. So, keeping that in mind, we have to remember, as of right now, uh, the Indian curriculum, choosing a certain stream is a buy one get two combo. If you like physics, you get chemistry and maths free, or chemistry and bio free. So it's slightly stringent with the way you choose subjects. And of course, there are certain times that you have to choose a certain combination to be eligible for a certain subject. So, for example, if you have to pursue architecture, for example, you will have to take in physics, chemistry, and maths. Though chemistry is not a very important aspect to pursue architecture, the entrance exams, apart from NATA, if you want to go for IIT Kharagpur or IIT Roorkee, you will have to go through JEE Mains and JEE Advanced and uh, the architectural aptitude test. So you will have to take in certain subjects as a combination, even though you might not like it. It will keep some options open. So take it like a bit of medicine that keeps more options open. And of course, there are colleges that have various processes or various criteria for allowing you to choose certain subjects. There might be an eligibility criteria for pursuing a certain stream or a certain course in a certain college. It's very important to know, basis the university or college you want to pursue your studies in, how are they treating those various subjects? So, for example, there are certain subjects like physical education that, unless you're pursuing physical education at Delhi University as a degree course, it's not usually considered in your best of four. So, if you're choosing certain subjects, do remember how are they going to be treated in best of four, during your merit-based applications. And of course, if you're looking at class 11th and 12th, I know that most of you guys in 11th and 12th already have a plan A in place. And I've also seen that the plan B and plan C only come when plan A is failed. And often that is a very, that's a very late time to be able to wake up to that idea. I usually encourage students to build a plan B and plan C even in class 11 itself, so that you can prepare for alternative entrance exams, understand what is the admission criteria like, and thereby prepare yourself for it. So usually a plan A is basis, your favorite subjects. Sometimes it could be going deeper into your favorite chapters as well. That could also open up ideas about what you want to do in your during your UG or your undergraduate programs. Plan B, I'm sure most of you have hobbies as well. And sometimes those hobbies can intersect with academic interests. I'll give you an example. I know a lot of you probably like sports. And though, let's say, for example, for India, if you're looking at a sport like cricket, we have crores of people who play it. We have only a certain number of people who actually get paid for playing it. So what I mean to say is, getting into the Indian cricket team perhaps is statistically more difficult than getting into an IIT as well. So, can I find a career that can keep my interest in sports and an academic subject together? So, I have friends from school who loved writing and like sports. They're now sports journalists. There are people who love sports and wanted to pursue medicine, are becoming sports doctors. There are people who pursue sports psychology and still work with sports in some sense or the other. Some of you love mathematics and love sports. You guys can find yourself in a very niche area called sports analytics. And you will be responsible for why a certain player is actually transferred to another club, at what price, and what type of team you actually want to build it. Moneyball is a very good example of a movie that actually tells you about the importance of economics and maths in sports analytics. And of course, Plan C bases an entrance exam, because sometimes if you're only reliant on your merit for class 12, it is dependent on that one day how you go and perform at the end at the college, or I'm sorry, at the board exam. So if you goof up at the board exam, you have a possibility of not getting through your favorite college as well. So to be able to mitigate that risk, in case if I don't do well in class 12 boards, as long as you get a 50 or 16 above, a lot of colleges will allow you to take a separate entrance exam, prove your metal, and then get in. So that kind of opens up another door for you in case your plan A does not work out. So that is basically my idea of how career planning should be like. And in order to do that in a more holistic manner, I think a psychometric assessment goes a long way. And post that, a discussion with perhaps a career counselor to be able to hone down on what your option should be and what is the preparation that is needed is absolutely essential. So on that note, I would close. I hope I have kept to the 15-minute timeline. Over to you, Maha. If you have any questions, you can let me know.
Thanks, John. I think it was a very interesting take on how to look at even choosing a career, how to plan. Two things which you mentioned really got my attention. There's always a huge belief that getting into IIT is one of the toughest. In fact, almost all the statistics around the world say how difficult getting into IIT is compared to getting into some of the Ivy colleges. But getting into the Indian cricket team is much more difficult, probably 10 times, 100 times more difficult, right? Especially with the gully cricket and IPL, it's throwing up thousands of people, and the competition is really, really hard. Okay, but the second thing which you mentioned, I think, which is the base for it, it will be a takeaway also, which I will anyway summarize it in the end, is start by choosing what you love. Now, many times when we talk about careers, people tend to immediately link it to jobs, and second, immediately link it to their chosen stream. Now, how would someone from a vocational subject area look at the same thing, right? Because they are not looking at it as maths, physics, chemistry, biology, arts, commerce, etc. So, what would be your thoughts? Before I go to Isha ma'am, so you could probably give in your inputs.
So we have a very extensive vocational training program that goes on in India. We have ITIs that deal with technical training as well. There are technical and non-technical vocational trainings. I would say primarily it would depend on the individual if they're interested in technical areas. So I'll give you an example. If you look at a place like Gujarat, you have two primary industries in diamonds and textiles, right? And a lot of the areas that work in there require some technical skilling beforehand. There are certain areas which do not require technical skilling. It's very important to know what are your local industries, thereby what kind of trainings you can take in. A lot of these trainings are actually at a very, very low cost and sometimes even free as well. So instead of looking at subjects, I'm sure there were some subjects that the student was interested in, even if they left it class 8. Class 8 onwards, you have a parallel vocational training system that is there, which is equivalent to school. Now, even if you leave at class 8, I'm sure there has been some parts of your school that you like. Right? It's a good place to start off from that. Right? And how much did I actually enjoy talking to others in my classroom? How much did I enjoy actually helping out people? How much did I enjoy helping out my teacher with certain aspects, or maybe even switching on the computer, ensuring that the computer in the lab was working fine. These are little things that actually tell you a lot about how the child is actually brought up, what type of personality traits they have. And I think there are two areas to it. One is what is your personality area actually pointing towards, and the other is look at the industries that are near you, thereby reverse engineer that and figure out what types of trainings will be required if you're interested in any of those industries. However, so there are some people who actually venture beyond the local geography and they say, okay, I am interested in textile. I don't have anything textile here, or I'm interested in food processing. I want to go in, let's say in Tirupur in Tamil Nadu, you have a place for textile, right? But if I'm sitting in Bangalore, I don't have that much of scope for textile as much as Tirupur. So it might make more sense for me to actually go to a place like that, get more exposure, learn more, because I know that students who come from the ITI program, especially from the engineering programs that are there, they have more hands-on and practical experience than the engineering students as well. You can ask this to any recruiter out there, and they will all agree with me. So you have more hands-on experience in certain areas. And of course, if you go through certain programs, you're guaranteed a minimum wage, you're guaranteed apprenticeship, you have a structural system for pay, and that actually protects people from exploitation as well. So you have a very, very stringent system for vocational careers as well that I think enough people actually know about and not enough people go for. I do hope that more people actually apply for it, and thereby you would have probably more opportunities created always.
So thanks, John. So let me now take a different view to the whole thing. John gave us a view of how an academic expert, career expert, will look at it in terms of how to go choosing it, how to structure the test, how to structure and identify in a very systematic manner their aptitudes, interests. That's what John and his company IDC do for a living. But let's take a look at what typical parents have in mind, what kinds of questions they come up with. Dealing with these kinds of challenges on a day-to-day basis is Isha. So let me start asking Isha by this question. Like what John explained, there's a very strong systematic method in going about doing it. But in your experience, can you just explain how is it today parents look at career, planning a career, and what are some changes which you can suggest before I come to the academic meaning or the administrative part of it? So over to you, Isha.
Thank you for your question. Parents, maybe I may be region specific out here, but parents basically go for tried and tested formulas. They do not want an uncertain future for their children. So they stick to the viable, the convenient choice of careers that we have all seen. And specifically focusing in Orissa, it is the science stream that pulls all the parents towards it, with the defense that the child will have more options. Why is this? It's because generally there is a lack of awareness of the choices, careers available in most of the streams, like commerce or humanity. Still hesitant to take any risk or take any chances with their kids' future when they think of the career choices. Previously, sir, what used to happen basically was unless a child flunks, then only the child would come down to a career counselor, or the parents would seek out a career counselor, hoping to find out why it happened that the child had taken up science, because apparently the parents wanted him or her to take up science. So that was trend 7-8 years back. But last year onwards, the children have become more aware. They are more informed about the choices of career available. So the children have become more informed, and they are actively seeking out to know more about the various choices that they have, the universities that provide these kind of subjects that they want to take up. It is more based on interest rather than a financial aspect involved. They want to learn rather than earn for now. So yes, a certain changes have been noticeable until the last year in the parents and the children seeking out career choices.
When you talk about parents helping children decide on their careers, the point which you brought in, this is something which I experienced, and I want to ask you, how often is this a challenge? Many parents who come with the children to the career counseling fairs at schools or anywhere typically say this: I wish my child can do this. I wish he gets into this kind of a stream. I dream that he gets into this kind of a job. In fact, most of the time it is what the parent thinks, it is his or her wish or her dream. But
Absolutely.
how many times are they looking at what is the wish,
so that
dream
would be
of a
around
child?
6 out of 10 times.
Okay. So how would you deal with such situations?
See, it takes a lot of patience. What you're saying is correct in terms of parents wanting to relive their lost dreams through their children. That's one aspect of it. There are many parents who probably wanted to, become a doctor, become an engineer, or due to some other circumstances or situations, they could not. So they are kind of reliving their lives through their children because uh, of the fact that they are their children. Second, there is the social aspect of choosing science. It is quite evident in the Odisha circle, at least. The social aspect of taking science. I mean, it sounds very weird when I talk about it, but 6 out of 10 parents again would like their children to take up science only because they'll be able to take or to be able to say to their peers or to the society at large that yes, my child has taken up is studying the science stream, regardless of the child's interest, regardless of the child's aptitude.
I think this we see more often in probably doctors and entrepreneurs, right?
Doctors and
They sort of
entrepreneurs,
force.
basically, yeah, they kind of think that it's an hereditary thing that if I am a doctor, 9 out of 10 times they do want their child to also take up a medical. But of course, I'll take a positive stance here that things are changing. There are parents who are accepting whatever choice of interest the child has in their career. So things are looking up.
Because you are an educator in the school. So the school ecosystem, many times the parents come and ask the teacher, class teacher, right? Not even the career counselor, because not many schools have career counselors. Now, in such situations, it becomes extremely important to educate, bring the teachers to a capacity so that they're able to even address, understand, and able to do that. Now, how would you advise a school to really look at this? What should they take so that they can really help their children focus better on what careers?
It is actually a very relevant subject that you have brought up. It is more often than not, schools do not have a career counselor, and usually we refer to an outside external agency which do a good enough job. But if the teachers of the various departments that are there in the school, they to take up the initiative to be trained, the teachers go through the workshops to know about different careers. May it not be all, may it be various options or career choices available in their particular department, so that the teachers also know of apart from obviously their experience, they also know about the upcoming careers in their particular field or the upcoming careers that are available to the children, so that the children have a place to go to. We all know that children are more comfortable with the teachers, and they have a rapport that is set for life almost, and they find it very comforting to go or secure place to go and ask the questions. So if the teachers of all departments or the teachers who deal with students from class 9 to 12 or 8 to 12, they need to be trained through workshops and sensitization programs and such, so that they have an idea about optional careers available in the various subject that they teach, as well as the other choices of careers, not your conventional ones, the ones that are beyond the trend, those kind of careers.
Vocational careers is something not most of the parents of, say, a private school going child will be looking at. They sort of have this stigma towards that. While the new education policy drives to address that, you also just brought that in your initial introduction. So, what are some ways that schools or parents can think that there's huge opportunity in that? In fact, John mentioned at the very start some of the largest, biggest challenges across the world and growing at a heavy speed is pollution, is waste, is safety. It is not that we always need engineers to solve it. We need doctors to solve it. We need lawyers to solve it. We need people with creative ideas. So it can be anyone. Now, how would you suggest a school or a parent to look at it?
See, basically, a set of skill sets are more important than having your conventional career these days. Talking about vocational subject, we kind of CBSE has already introduced a set of say 90 skill subjects, that vocational subjects for students, that has to be introduced from class 9 onwards. Okay, so subjects like retail, where the person learns to be a sales associate, subject like agriculture, where you learn to be an agriculture extension worker, subject of say insurance, where you learn to be sales executive. So, but as you said, the practical issue in this is parents find it very difficult to accept or digest the idea of a vocational subject, because vocational subject is frowned upon, but it could be a well needed uh, say a boost of help in case anything goes wrong, or in case the child is interested for whatever reasons. Life is never stable, and that is why, apart from your job choices, apart from your aptitude, apart from your interest, a person needs a set of skills that also needs to be taught to the children. A particular set of job skills, or skills like life skills, that we have from class 7 onwards, that is mandatory for children from class 7 to have it. Life skill is basically from class 1 to 12 actually, but 7 onwards a child needs to be taught those skills through periods assigned, so that by the time the child is in say 10th or 12th, the child has an idea about decision making, has an idea about emotional quotient, or stress management, or critical questioning, and all those. Now, coming to this, when we are going through this COVID-19 quarantine phase, when everyone is in home isolation, so many industries are shutting down, and so many workforce people have suffered. Right now, don't you think the concept of adapting to changes, the skills of adapting to changes, is important for everyone who has a job right now? Things have changed so drastically from offline to online. Like, if I'm talking specifically about a teaching job, the teachers, senior teachers who were used to copies and pens and blackboards and not even smart boards, hold their phone and start taking classes online. So those of them who have that adaptive skills, the skills of adaptation, quick adaptation, will survive, or will thrive well, rather. So, a basic set of skills is highly essential for the students. Plus, vocational training would definitely help them secure or be ready, job ready, when they are thinking of, earning or being a financial member of this country.
Thank you. I think this is one area which both almost all the experts agree that in the future, along with degrees, along with a set of educational qualifications, skills matter. Skills really matter. In fact, many companies, it started with Elon Musk, Tesla, announcing that they no longer hold importance to degrees. You have to pass the entrance or the test which they give, and as long as you pass, and it's a very different kind of a test. It's not a test which is a multiple choice question. It's a scenario which is what you are given. You are given 3 or 4 different things to solve, and then you are recruited. So they are no longer looking at whether you have an engineering degree or a medical degree or any of these degrees. I think more and more companies will also jump into that. We can see that happening in many parts. So just to summarize till now what we heard from both of you, the very first thing is it's very important to look at a career in whatever way we are looking at. But fundamental, keep upping your skills, improving your different sets of skills, because that's what is going to lead you into the future. The second, have a plan A or a plan B, what John said. Third, ensure that you love what you want, what you do, and don't go by what is default, right? Go by choice, go by design. That's why we even put the whole thing that design your future, right? In fact, many of them who go into many jobs today go by default, including choosing their subject options that they go by default. It could be because of parental pressure, societal pressure, anything. But now is the time to think differently. So let me just go to a couple of audience questions. There are quite a few questions which have come. The very first one, let me ask. Samiksha Tomar has asked this question. Hello, my name is Samiksha. I am a student of class 10. I want to become an environmentalist, but my family and friends ask me from where will I get my income. I tell them that environment is more important than money, but still money is important for living is what she believes. So what should I do? Please guide me is what she's asking. So let me address this question to John. John, over to you. You could help Samiksha.
Okay. Given that environmentalists also get paid, there are a lot of manufacturing units that actually require people who have an expertise in sustainability and waste management as well, because those are the kind of terms that are required. Even if you have a certain, there are, for example, in India, you have the National Green Tribunal that actually takes care of what kind of pollution levels each industry actually sets off. So you have careers in law, you have careers in activism and journalism. All of that could impact how you work as an environmentalist as well. Otherwise, you could work directly through sciences and in research, and you're going to get paid for it. So when you say generally environmentalist, there are so many different roles that one can do uh, and impact the environment in some way or the other. So technically speaking, I think these roles have grown a lot in the last 15 years, and for good measure, because it is a need. So I'm pretty sure that you'll find yourself paid at least for something or the other if you're working in this space. So now the other part to it is, am I going to get paid as much as a different career? Am I going to get paid as much as that career or as much as a cricketer? That is an unfair method of actually assessing whether a career is good enough or not, because there might be certain careers that pay really well but are extremely stressful careers to begin with. I know lawyers from my batch, from my school, who started off work with me, have started off working with packages which were about 2 lakhs a month, but they were working about 17 hours a day. Do I want to, you know, I would say sacrifice 17 hours a day for getting the salary? Not everyone is interested in that space. And that's fine. I mean, because the problem is the way we kind of propagate success directly is linked to bank account, to the number of cars or the number of houses you have. That essentially is not the definition of success for everybody. I mean, you can choose to what your definition of success would be. But coming back to your question, you definitely will find jobs in many sectors. That goes without saying. In fact, there are sustainability courses that also teach you sustainability management as well. So there could be some measures that you could take in a corporate setup as well that could reduce, let's say, simple things like paper wastage or energy usage and so on. In fact, there are management methods that you could reduce wastage in many senses. It could be either energy or resources. So there is something or the other that is always there. And given that this is a very important need, in fact, to the extent that we have tried to privatize the waste management sector, tells you that it is a very, very important need for everybody across the board.
Samiksha, I hope you got the answer from John. There's a huge opportunity in the field which you're looking at. You should take a conscious call. If you love, please go behind it, right? Everything will automatically follow. So there's another question. The person has not written his name, but this is what the student says. I am in 9th grade and I'm preparing for SAT. I love studying subjects like physics and mathematics. I'm also interested in theater, mostly live theater. I can practically do anything. I develop an interest very fast and lose an interest at the same pace. I have no idea about what I should do because I can't pursue the same career all my life. I can't wake up every day thinking that I'll do the same thing I did yesterday and doing it for the past 4 years. So he wants to decide, he or she, I don't know, how should he or she choose the career. So maybe Ipshita ma'am, can you, Isha ma'am, can you please?
Thank you for the question. So in 9th grade, preparing for SAT, quite commendable, I must say. That I would analyze from that you are someone with a very capable with cognitive capabilities. So take a decision. It sounds very simple and it's easier said than done. Either take the analytical way or take the action way. Either. So analytical way will take a while. Action way works immediately. So why do you think that you are so indecisive? That's a question that you will have to ask yourself. I do not know your name, but that is a question that you would have to ask yourself. And if you really are indecisive, as you say, you have an interest in lot many things, so you are not able to decide what to do, as well as you have decided that you do not want to keep doing the same thing for the same day, like for a longer period of time, and you need to keep changing your life. So my suggestion to you would be, what would be your safety net? That is up to you. You will have to think of this. What would be your safety net? What is it actually that you're looking for? You are highly interested and you like taking up things, and then you lose an interest. So maybe the attention span is something that you need to focus on here, and try to find out what holds your attention span for longer duration of time. So all those things that take up your attention span for a longer duration of time could be your area of specific interest. So you need to pick out your area of specific interest. So instead of thinking, okay, I like this, and I like this, take up one that is of specific interest to you and stick to it for a while. See how it goes. Once this is decided, look into what you like to do to make a career out of it. I am sure that you would find out alternatives, avenues, various, explore what other options are available. Try to see what holds your focus for a long period of time in that particular decision that you have taken in that particular field, whether it is theater, whether you go on continuing with your SAT and become a physicist or a mathematician. It's up to you. The choices are galore. It's up to you how interesting you make your life, how interestingly you carry your life forward, or how interestingly you hold the focus of yourself. So I would say it is okay to be indecisive for now. You are, after all, in 9th grade. You have every right to be indecisive. So you choose. That is how we choose things. So you choose, but stick to the one, or try to find out the one that holds your attention span for longer duration. Out of that cluster, you find out the one that you like. Thank you so much for your question.
Thanks, Isha ma'am. I think you combined both what you had mentioned earlier and what John subsequently also said. I think the 9th grade student should quickly try out as many options as possible, and then whatever he or she loves, I think they will stick to it, right? It's maybe because they've still not found the one which they love. So it's important. You're still at very young age. You're only 9th standard. Go trying, keep trying, right? There's one more question. This question is from a 10th standard student. I am in 10th standard. I have a great interest in literature and psychology, but I'm going to pursue engineering because it has more scope and a higher salary. I would like to ask for the scope of literature and psychology. So I think, John, you should take this question because it's very similar to what you had answered in the earlier question. Over to you, John.
So if you look at how the Silicon Valley also is hiring people as well, Apple has this team of that you call futurists. These are the people who ideate what type of devices could be working 10, 20 years down the line. Futurists are essentially people who are fictional writers who could be a basis in history and literature and so on. You could find yourself working in tech industries even from a background in the arts. I'll give you an example. I have a very close friend of mine who works in a company that monitors social media chatter. The person who heads products for his industry, for his company, has a background in fine arts and philosophy. So the moral of the story is even tech industries will hire you regardless of what industry you're from. Engineering has more scope and more pay. I feel that statement is a little contested because I can give you an example of my own. I have friends from school who have joined in engineering while my starting salary was not as great as them, I can tell you about 10 or 11 years down the line, I think it's comparable. So it's only in the long term, if you're really good at what you're doing, even if you're a photographer, I'll give you an example within your own city as well. You have photographers who get paid 500 rupees a day. There are photographers who get paid 5 lakh a day as well. How many zeros you get at the end of a paycheck is really dependent on the kind of skill set you bring in. And not essentially because I live in a place like Bangalore where we have 60 to 5% engineers who don't work in the area that they studied for. So you spend 4 years of your time and money studying a subject that you don't want to work in the long term. Doesn't make a lot of cognitive sense to me. So if you're looking at only scope without an expertise in physics, maths, and chemistry, then that's a dangerous area to actually tread on. However, if you have expertise in physics, maths, and chemistry, and innately you're a problem solver. I worked in recruitment in companies in corporates like Wipro as well. I have hired and fired engineers also. And the most basic thing that most recruiters want from engineers are you have to be innately a problem solver. Uh, Everything else comes secondary to it. I have got answers to those kind of questions like I'm the best in class. I got the highest marks in class. I memorized the most amount of syllabus. Uh, there are always answers to those kind of traits because if you talk about memory, my laptop can download the syllabus in less than 5 minutes. Tell me something that you can do that machines can't. So that is when your human only skills come into play, which is creativity, problem solving, conflict management, empathy for your teammates, communicating really well. These are the kind of skill set that you're actually paid for. If you look at your primary and secondary skill set, which is your ability to read and write and your technical skill set that you learn from your graduation only, uh, when recruiters come down to for placements, all students from the final year look exactly the same. The only thing that actually sets you apart are your tertiary skills, your human only skills. So no matter which area you're going for, it's important to know whether you're actually good at it. Because it is a myth that has been busted more than 15 years ago that engineering does not essentially pay you the best and does not have the most amount of scope. Engineering only has scope for people who are good at engineering. I know people who have lived and breathe, who live and breathe engineering because they break down devices at home. They constantly look at something to work on. I think those children are far more innately prepared for what the career type is looking for. And also, a lot of the skill sets that are being taught right now at many colleges, uh, unfortunately, are sometimes outdated as well. We've taken a very long time to even include subjects like machine learning and artificial intelligence, even at the IITs. So, curriculum wise, we are still not up there. We're still working very hard to actually update our curriculum as well. So, essentially, might not mean that because you are at that level, though, there are many people who are open to hiring engineers. But what I mean to say ultimately is that if you have an interest in other areas, uh, let's say like looking at theater or anything else, uh, keep those hobbies in place. Don't let go of those hobbies no matter what stream you're going into. But at the same time, again, things like literature as well help you understand people very well because literature is your first stepping stone to understanding psychology because when you're writing character studies and so on. But having said that, ultimately, these two interest areas could help you very well in engineering, but not essentially, just because engineering has more scope or pays better in the initial levels, the long term might not be, might be a different picture altogether. Because if you look at a 10, 15 year down the line, most people who are managers at various organizations, whether you're looking at advertising or career counseling or even IT firms, this pay doesn't look too different in the long term. It's only the initial levels where there is highest amount of difference. But of course, if that is what you're looking for, if the pay is what you're looking for at the initial stages, yes, I agree. There are certain careers that pay you much, much better in the beginning. But after that, whatever your pay is going to be is entirely dependent on the kind of skill sets you bring to the table. Because if you look at the mid management and above, it's not the degrees that they hold that actually gets them the promotion. It's their human only skill sets. So I think while you're focusing on engineering, it's good to ask yourself whether I really enjoy what I'm doing. Am I really good at the subjects that I'm looking at? And if you want to figure out what type of specialization you want to go into engineering, your favorite chapters in the physics or chemistry textbook will actually give you that story as well. So, I wouldn't say that that statement holds true for everybody. So, you can definitely have an evaluation of why you like these areas and why you want to go for it, and thereby prepare for the courses as well. But yeah, I mean, you can always keep all your interests alive. And in continuation to the last question, also, that even things look a little different later on in the future, most of the honest adults that I know don't know what they want to do 10 years down the line. it's a very unfair question that we ask children that what do you want to do 10 years down the line when they've only been alive for 15 or 17 years. So 10 years down the line looks like a very, very long story for most of us. In fact, even if you ask me, what do you want to do at the age of 45? I don't know the answer to that question very honestly, right? A lot of us actually are building skills along the way. And I believe in taking, every day as it comes, and every day has a different opportunity and a different opportunity to learn as well. So as long as you're open to learning, I think you'll always find yourself in a space that you're always excited about.
So with that, I come to the end of it. So thank you, Isha ma'am. Thank you, John. It was a very interesting session. Quite a few queries. We could not ask all the queries for lack of time, but we would want each of you to share your feedback at the end of the session. You may receive a small questionnaire, and please spread the word. It's important that all of us get the right start. We are here to help you, but best wishes to all of you. So thank you, and look forward to an engaging journey with all of you. Good day.